doing construction.
Yeah, I think that's what really brought me. I had a moment.
Well, it's about 6:15 in the morning, mid-December. I've got some notion in my head that I might be looking to open up a meditation retreat. I'm going north to look at a piece of property.
One thing you should know, and that is, I am a very stubborn individual. Generally, when I get something into my head, then I just have to see it through to the end. It was the same when I entered retreat 13 years ago. I went there to accomplish something, and I wasn't just going through the motions or following some sort of tradition. I needed to know what meditation was all about. I needed to understand the mind. And so I couldn't be wasting my time and just wait for 4 years until the main gate was opened up again. So anyway, based on this experience of dedicated and uninterrupted practice, I came to see just how beneficial a conducive environment can be for meditation.
In 350 meters, turn right on Island Highway.
And not only that, but also that this sort of environment is something that is sorely lacking in the West. I mean, there are formal retreat centers where you can do a traditional 3-year, 3-fortnight retreat.
Turn right on Island Highway.
But for most people, once they've finished their time inside, they just pick up where they left off and continue on with their worldly lives.
Turn left on Discovery Crescent, then board ferry.
The only difference is that now they carry the title Lama, and more often than not, they carry this with some amount of pride, as if it makes them something special. Well, as you know, I returned to Canada about a year ago, and once it became clear that I would not be able to continue my studies in the monastery in Nepal, I decided that the most beneficial thing I could do here in the West was to develop a place of practice. Somewhere where people who are serious about their meditation can apply themselves to their practice without mundane distractions, and also without needing to worry about their livelihood. And not just for 3 or 4 years, but for as long as it takes to gain the results. So I had to find a location, somewhere that has the qualities of physical isolation, somewhere that was naturally cut off from all the crazy distractions of the modern world. A place where a meditator can just meditate and not have to worry about the mundane challenges of life. But it isn't easy to find such a place.
The sun's just coming up now. I'm going to make 2 crossings. There's 2 islands to get to this. 2 ferries to get to this island. Really, it's quite amazing. Canadians must have very good karma.
There are spiritual communities in California and Mexico and also in Europe. But as I said before, these are difficult places for authentic practitioners. There are far too many people with too many ideas, and also, it's way too easy to get swept away by all the excitement.
In 400 meters, board ferry.
Spiritual communities, like monasteries, are basically worldly institutions with a Dharma flavor. And at times, they are even worse than actual worldly institutions. Large gatherings of people need managers and logistics, and there are all sorts of difficult situations just waiting to happen at any minute. People are tribal. They tend to form groups to exert their influence over others. And many are scrambling to be the teacher's favorite student, or to gain some kind of position in the hierarchy of the institution. And all of this is a recipe for disaster just waiting to happen. Well, Canada is a huge country, and is one of the few places in the world where there is still plenty of genuine wilderness. But also you have to be realistic, because we're talking about a place for Westerners to meditate, and not a place for Tibetan yogis and yoginis. For example, my teacher's teacher, Jigme Punsop Rinpoche, for instance, spent years living in a hole he dug in the ground, and that was in the high mountains of Tibet. He was very poor at the time, and at night all he could do was to cover his head with a shawl. And also, he only had one bowl of yogurt to eat each day, and that was offered by local nomads to the entire Sangha.
Doing construction.
Well, if I establish a meditation center in the middle of the Yukon, then we're not even going to get that much to eat. It's not like there will be lots of faithful people queuing up to make offerings to our little group. In fact, they'd probably think we were a cult or something.
The air's so clean, Canada.
And besides, Westerners aren't able to practice with that kind of hardship. They need hospitals and banks, a variety of different foods to eat, medicine and warm clothing. And what's more, we live in a litigious society. So I can't have people dying on me. That would stop the whole venture, dead in its tracks. Anyway, at first I looked at land for sale in the Yukon and the northern interior, and it's abundant and inexpensive too. But I decided that this wouldn't be practical, and that I needed to find somewhere nearer at hand. And besides, I'm going to be here looking after my parents, right? So I need somewhere I can visit regularly so I can develop it over time, until my parents pass from this life into the next. And then, once we have said our final goodbyes, everything should be ready, and I can just remove myself there to complete my life's practice. Wasn't it Robbie Burns who said, "The best laid plans of mice and men often go awry"? Well, I'm under no illusions, and I know things don't always work out. But it is my firm belief that as long as you have a pure intention, then in the end, things will turn out fine. Well, there are plenty of people living off-grid in Western Canada, and there are lots of little islands dotted around that you can only get to by boat. So I started looking at the listings, and then something caught my eye. It was a picture of a little log cabin in the woods, in the snow. And there was this big, long building, and to me, it looked kind of like a yoga hall or something. And also, it was on a small island that was only accessible by boat, by taking 2 ferries. So that immediately ticks a lot of boxes, right? So I decided to have a look. After all, there is nothing to lose. I like the fact that there are 2 ferries, because that gives the place a feeling of inaccessibility. And it reminded me of the story of the yogi Lorepa, who traveled to the island of Semodo that was only accessible when Great Lake Namso froze solid in the harshest of winters. Well, the ocean was particularly calm and beautiful that morning, and the island had a feeling of solitude, the sort of place where nobody will ever bother you, even for months on end. But at the same time, it is a place where you have access to the basic necessities, and also the regional hospital isn't too far away in case of emergencies. The place was obviously a ghost house, and no one had lived there for many years. In fact, the last occupant died under inauspicious circumstances, and so the place had an eerie feeling of solitude about it. But these things aren't a problem for a place of practice. In fact, the yogis of the past used to intentionally seek out these sort of places, frequented by ghosts or inhabited by lepers. And in fact, this property borders 2 graveyards, one ancient and one new. When I heard about this, the first thing that came to mind was the severance practice that we do every night in the formal 3-year retreat. And I imagined being able to sit at the edge of the old graveyard and blow into my thigh-bone trumpet and bang on the drum. But that's just me being sentimental and reminiscent about my days in retreat. Well, I made an offer in the end. I mean, the land was really cheap, and there's quite a lot of it too. And although I wasn't convinced that this venture could ultimately bring any positive results, I thought I may as well give it a try and just see what my karma had in store.
A lot of rot.
You can see rot.
So I returned to my parents and waited to see what would happen. But unfortunately, there were lots of people interested in this place. And in the end, someone else made a higher offer. And so I lost the bid. But this didn't bother me at the time, because I'd pretty well made up my mind that this idea of building a meditation retreat was a bit crazy and also impractical. I mean, it isn't difficult to erect a few meditation huts and sort out the power, water, and sanitation and that sort of thing. The difficult part is finding people who are genuine practitioners, who are serious about their meditation, and what's more, are committed to seeing their practice through to the end, until they gain the results. But to my mind, authentic spiritual practice will never take hold in the West, until there are Westerners who have developed these qualities that only arise from years of dedicated and uninterrupted practice. And anyway, it's not like I need a place to practice. Once my parents have passed away, I can always just return to Nepal. There, I can wander off into the mountains of Yolmo, the place where Milarepa and Guru Rinpoche used to meditate. And in those mountains there are people who have great faith in the Dharma, and you can always find a place to practice. And not only that, but also find sustenance. But for me, there's a problem here. Because if we only look to the east, if we only dream about monasteries in the clouds, in far-off and exotic places, and if we never bring the Dharma home to the West, then this ancient and precious tradition, this path of spiritual awakening that has persisted over countless eons, will never be established or take hold in our lands. But whatever is the case, it isn't certain what our karma has in store for us. We just have to keep trying, to see what we can do to be of benefit, to find solitude in a place of practice, and to make progress on the spiritual path.